So, welcome everybody to Quarantine Break. I'm Kiana, founder of Eat Soccer, and this morning we're so excited to have Tiffany Hollins, who's the Global Activation Manager for the UFC, with us this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to finally be here and make it.
It's so exciting that you're going to be able to share your story about your work in international marketing when it comes to sports, luxury brands, and events. So my first question for you, since you're currently with the UFC, what is your personal sports story? And how did you go from I love sports to working for the UFC?
So my sports story pretty much starts from when I was born. I was born into a very athletic family. Both my mom and dad were active in basketball, volleyball, track and field. So, I mean, I don't remember a time where sports wasn't in my life. I mean, we still actively watch it pretty much every night, reruns, everything you can think of. So sports is just, it's part of my DNA, I guess I should say. Even though I'm not the best athlete, I'm definitely, sports is part of me. My transition from I love sports to UFC, it's kind of like a weird, twisty story. So I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, which I don't know if most people know, we didn't really have any professional sports teams here, which is crazy when you think about it, but now we do. So yeah, I've always been a sports fan, and just to cut out my younger years, I started playing soccer at the age of 6, and that's when I began my sports side. But I moved to California to go to college, and I was on the cross country team there. And after I graduated school, I was always trying to find ways to get into sports, both physically and on the business side. And I mean, to be honest, it's very hard, but I was persistent. So I did a lot of jobs that were just jobs that you do to pass the time. So I worked in customer service, doing admin stuff. But at the same time, I was always attending webinars, events, conferences, sports conferences, always trying to surround myself with people in the sports world because like many jobs in the sports world, you have to almost know someone to really get in there. So yeah, I just kind of kept attending these events on my personal time. I would try to figure out ways that I could, kind of create some kind of sports business or something. And it paid off. I would have people who would invite me to events or invite me to, roundtable discussions regarding sports, or even discussions where athletes were there talking about the sports side of business. The business side of sports. And so I networked like crazy, and I got lucky with the UFC job. Well, I shouldn't say lucky, I put in a lot of work. I was in a group with sports professionals. And one day this woman posted this job for the UFC and said, if anyone is interested, let me know, send me your resume. And that's where it started from there. So she helped me get my foot in the door, which is amazing.
Can you explain to our viewers what are the duties of an activation manager?
Mm-hmm.
And then let us know if those responsibilities vary, if you're with a sports brand versus a luxury brand or something like that.
So an activation manager, you do a little bit of everything. So you are involved in the marketing side, you're involved in the sales side, you're a little bit of PR, you're a relationship manager. So for example, a good activation I could think of, say you go to a sporting event and you're upstairs, where all of the concourse is, and you see booths out there where you can take your picture with a brand behind you, or maybe a player is signing autographs for a certain brand. That's an activation. So I have partners that I work with at the UFC. And so what we do at fights is we try to have activations for them. So it could be something where there's an in-fighter appearance where the fighter may show up to an event that's not fighting, and they may have a booth where they're signing autographs, taking pictures, doing demonstrations. So those types of things are activations. As far as it varying from industry, I think it's pretty similar from industry to industry. I think it's just certain industries are more entertaining. So sports is definitely entertaining. If you do a travel one, you'll definitely get to travel a lot more, do a lot more events. Say, for example, if you work, pharmaceuticals, it's probably not as glamorous, but at the end of the day, you're doing like the same type of task, like dealing with a lot of clients and vendors.
So describe your typical week in a lead up to a
Ooh,
UFC match.
ooh, that's difficult because I feel like it can vary just so much. So it's the difference with the UFC is that there's individual fighters. There's no real teams. So for example, if we're working with a partner, we may have everything set up. We're making sure that their logo is on the mat, that they're included in the broadcast where their name is mentioned, something like that. And yeah, those things we can get done in advance and everything's normal. But now that we've had this COVID-19, it's kind of changed everything because everything was put to a halt. We had to cancel many events, or postpone, I should say. And so now it's, we get the last minute notification about an event. And so now we have to work with our partners very quickly to try to organize everything. So that makes things a little hectic and it's just very hard to predict. That's actually why it was harder to like set up our call because I just didn't know my schedule at the time. It's a little easier right now. But yeah, and leading up to the week, I can tell you, for example, say if one of the main fighters gets injured or sick and he can't fight, then if we made a lot of marketing material or set up a lot of activations around this fighter, we have to change everything. So we might have to wait for them to announce the new fighter and then line everything else up again in a very frantic manner. So yeah, it just varies from week to week, or fight to fight, I should say.
Now, I know that you've done a lot of work with brands outside of the US because you spent
Mhm.
significant time in Italy, and you've also worked with luxury brands and other event things on the marketing side. What are some of the funny and or stressful things that happen in your line of work?
Um, some of the stressful things, it's just those last minute changes that, I mean, you try to prepare for and you think of everything that you can do that, that might come up, but at the end of the day, you're just not always prepared. So, there's a lot of late nights, a lot of emails back and forth, a lot of phone calls. So those can be stressful. But for the most part, especially if you're working in sports or entertainment, travel, it's always fun. You get to meet very interesting people. You get to meet fighters, entertainers. So it's, yeah, like, for example, we had a fight on March 7th. And so, I got to go to the weigh-ins, and I don't know if anyone follows the UFC very closely, but it was the last press conference that we had between fighters. It was very, very lively and tense, but it was funny at the same time. So you get to see those behind the scenes, and they're in the stands with the fans watching it. So those moments can be very fun and very entertaining, and it's pretty cool to see them, replayed on Sports Center or ESPN. So those make things fun, the work worth it.
Now, you had the opportunity to study, work, and live abroad. What
Mhm.
inspired those decisions, and how did you create those opportunities for yourself there?
I think as a kid, I was always curious and wanted to just see the world. So one of my favorite shows as a kid was Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? I don't know if I just dated myself with that, but I used to love that show. So, I remember taking notes as a kid and writing down, the locations that she would hop around to and just thinking, okay, I want to go there. I want to go there. And yeah, as soon as I was able to make that happen, that's what I did. So when I was in college, I studied abroad in Italy for the first time at the age of 20. And that pretty much was the best decision I've ever made in my life. And I highly recommend it to every kid out there. If you have the opportunity to study abroad, do it. It will change your complete outlook on life and everything. So take advantage of it. Even if it's for a week, just do it. I highly recommend it. You won't miss home. You'll love it. You'll get so caught up in everything that you're doing there. You'll love it. Um, but with travel, and I'm sure you're the same, once you get that first taste of traveling abroad and seeing something just completely new and different to what you're used to, I mean, you have to do it. You just keep traveling over and over and finding new places. So yeah, that's kind of where I started with Carmen Sandiego. She was my big inspiration on that. And then I forgot the second part of your question.
How did you create the opportunities for you and work abroad?
So to move to another country can be quite difficult from the US to another country because there's so many strict laws with, the number of people they can let in. You need to have like some kind of work permit or study permit. And so at the time, I knew that I wanted to go back and do my MBA. And I also knew I wanted to live abroad. So what I did, I figured I'd kill a bird with two stones, or whatever that saying is. And I looked for MBA programs out of the country. And since I had studied abroad in Italy before, I knew that I could live there and focus, at the same time. So I picked Italy as my place to do my MBA. So that's how I knew I could get into the workforce there. So once I graduated, I networked a lot while I was in school. I ended up getting an internship after graduation with an alcohol company called Campari. And the amazing thing with that marketing internship was that they put me on the partnership sponsor side of Aperol Spritz and Manchester United. So
Nice.
I handled the day-to-day partnership with them. And one of my big tasks for that was we flew in a lot of our top distributors, about 90 of them. We flew them all to Manchester, and we gave them this amazing experience. So, and luckily I got to go. We flew them out. They stayed at the hotel right next to the stadium at Old Trafford. We gave them all the Manchester United kits with their names on it. They got to play on the Field of Dreams. We took them to the restaurants of some of the players. They got to meet some of the legends. And yeah, it was just an amazing 2-day experience. So those types of things, you get to experience. And I made sure while I was doing that internship, I made connections with people at Manchester United and just around the world. So I would say creating opportunities for yourself really, you really have to focus on networking and making those connections with people. So instead of just going to a job and just sitting there and doing your work, you need to find other opportunities where you can network with people. So even people in your department, say if you work in finance, go to the marketing side, talk to them if, that's your passion, if you're curious. But I think those types of things, it's very important that you just keep networking no matter what industry you're in, and you're still trying to get to another certain industry. So that's what I think helped me. So I also had another internship, which I got from networking. I went to a networking event and I met the speaker, and I told him, what I did and what I wanted to do. And he offered me an internship. So those types of things just kind of kept leading to other jobs and networking events. And so I think networking has been my biggest key. So even when I went into interviews, they'd say, "Oh, you worked here. Did you know so-and-so?" Or you could bring up that you knew somebody from another area. So you just have to do your homework a little bit too on those types of things. So I think just staying knowledgeable about, the industry that you want to be in, the people that you want to work with are very important to create those opportunities.
Did you have to learn Italian before you went, or did you know Italian from your time that you spent there in college, or?
So I knew a little bit of Italian before I went, but luckily my MBA program was in English, but I still tried to learn Italian on my own because I knew that was going to be important for staying there and networking. So I did learn some Italian, but I wouldn't consider myself fluent by any means. Like I could get by, but I don't think I could save someone's life if they needed me to translate something. But yeah, I think I knew enough to get by. So even going back to events, I would go to events in Italian all the time. Even if I only understood 50% of it, I would still go, and I would go up and approach people, speak to them. And most times people in Italy were very excited to meet someone from the US and talk to them and practice their English. So I think, yeah, it was fun, even though my Italian wasn't that great.
So it still allowed you to be able to work and get internships despite maybe the language deficiency. Awesome.
It did, yeah. And I even had one of my jobs offered to pay for my Italian lessons. So that was great as well. So if you let them know that you have that desire to work there and that you're willing to learn Italian, a lot of companies will pay for an additional, language lesson for you too. But yeah, don't be scared, about moving to another country that you don't know the language. You'll figure it out. You'll pick it up quickly.
Did you notice if there were any cultural differences in, the business setting that was, kind of different than, working here in the US, and how did you adjust to those?
I definitely did. So in the US, we're very, I don't know how to put it. We don't say things like, we don't tell our age. We don't say we're married. Like, we're not very open about those things when we go into interviews or we give a bio or something. But, when you're applying to jobs there, and it's kind of phasing out now, you put your birth date on there, you put a picture of yourself, you put if you're married or single on your resume. So those
Wow.
types of things were like an adjustment for me. So when I first saw that, I was like, how dare they ask me that? I was a little kind of thrown off by that, but you get used to it. So those types of things, you kind of just realize, oh, that's weird. And it's the same in the office too. So if someone asks you how old you are, like in the US, you really can't do that. But in Italy, oh, how old are you? Oh, you're new. How old are you? Are you married? Where do you live? Where's your apartment? How much do you pay for your apartment? So those types of
Oh,
things,
wow.
yeah, it's very open there. So you'll get asked that all the time. Like I can't even count how many times I was asked how old I was, if I was married, how much I paid for my apartment, where I lived. So things that are just that we keep to ourselves here in the US are just normal standard questions in Italy.
Can you tell us some interesting things about being an international marketing professional or about the industries that you worked in that the average person wouldn't know?
Um, I would say the average person wouldn't know or wouldn't think is that um, minus, those small things where people are very open in Italy. For the most part, I feel like most people work the same way. So I've worked with people in France, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, and for the most part, everyone kind of works exactly the same. It's the same type of flow, functions. You would think, you go to a different country, everything's going to be completely different, but it's not that different. So, if you get that opportunity to work abroad and you're scared that it's just going to be completely different, it isn't. So I would say, take the leap if you have that opportunity.
What have been some of your most memorable events that you worked on and why?
Um, the most memorable, so I actually have two. So going back to the Manchester United and Aperol Spritz one, I mean, people would kill for that opportunity to play on the Manchester United field. It was amazing. It was an empty stadium. You could just stand in the middle of the field and just look around and realize that you're standing in the same spot that many legends played in. So, I mean, that's one thing I'll just remember forever. And I go back and look at the pictures often. So that one was just an amazing experience. I don't know how to even describe it. And another experience I had was my first week at the UFC, and we had a huge fight that came up. And so I was supposed to work the event, but technically it was just shadowing, one of my coworkers. And the thing is, everything was done. So, once I got to the event, he was just like, you can just hang out and sit ringside and watch the
Oh my
fights if
goodness.
you want to. So yeah, my first week, I sat ringside at a very big UFC fight. And actually, it was one of the fights where it was the women's fight with Joanna and Wang Li. And it was like one of the most incredible women's fights that's probably going to go in the Hall of Fame. So I got to sit ringside and watch it. And I don't think you can get any closer without being in the ring. So it was pretty amazing.
Oh, that's really awesome. So,
Yeah.
since you're always traveling, what are three things you always carry in your travel bag?
Ooh, besides like my passport and phone, or
Besides
do I
your
have to?
passport and
Okay. Hand sanitizer. I carried hand sanitizer before this coronavirus outbreak, so I always have that. I have a battery pack for my phone in case my phone dies because I do like to take a lot of pictures and video. And probably sunglasses. So sunglasses, you can kind of hide your face if you're walking around and you want to look tough sometimes, or it's great when you're on a train or an airplane and you just want to go to sleep, but you don't want people to see your eyes half awake or half open.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think those are my three things that I always have in my bag no matter what. So even if you open my purse right now, you'll find those three items.
Now, I know, speaking of travel, that you had like a bucket list of places you wanted to travel to and things like that. What are all the places, or can you share some of the places that you've
Yes.
been and some of the places you actually still want to go?
Yes. So last year I did this thing called 12 new countries in 12 months, which the timing was perfect considering now we can't even really leave our homes. So I actually ended up doing 13 countries, which I got lucky that this amazing opportunity came up. So some of the places that I went to were like countries that you wouldn't think of going to, like Luxembourg, Egypt, Jordan, Finland. Where else did I go? Denmark, Sweden. Gosh, there's so many I can't remember now. Croatia, I think. Oh my gosh, there's so many. But I hit a bunch of countries that I had never been to, and they were just all amazing. Like each so different, but I loved all of them. Oh, I went to Belgium. That's another one I went to. I figured Drake was doing a concert there, so I could cross the Drake concert off and a new country at the
Oh,
same time.
nice.
Yeah, so I got to explore Antwerp and Brussels. And yeah, it was just an amazing experience. And the great thing about living in Europe, and particularly Italy, is that you're kind of in the center of Europe and the flights are just ridiculously cheap. So, I could be in Belgium in an hour. So I could just, leave Saturday morning and be there by 10 a.m. and have the whole weekend there and then come back home, at midnight on Sunday, or I fly in Monday morning. And so, yeah, it was just amazing to have that opportunity. So when you're in Europe, it's just, you can't help but to bounce around Europe and other places. So other countries that I would like to go to, oh my gosh, it's so many. I can't even keep up. I really want to go to Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal. I've never been to South America at all, which is just crazy. I keep trying to go and then something always comes up. So I really want to do Brazil, which I know that's your second home, Peru, Chile, just the list. I could go on forever with all the countries that I really want to go to.
So for students who are interested in learning more about marketing opportunities in industries such as sports,
Mhm.
luxury, and entertainment, what resources do you suggest they take a look at?
So if you want to get into like sports marketing or those types of things, there are tons of organizations now that you can join or just follow online, and they send out these great newsletters with job openings, internships. So some of my favorites right now would be Wise is a good one because they have chapters almost in every major city, which is Women in Sports and Events. And it's amazing. I highly recommend it. They do great events. They have great speakers. The women that attend these events are just, they've been in the industry for years. So they have a wealth of knowledge that they can help you with. And just, I highly recommend that one. Front Office Sports, it's a website, a sports website, and it's amazing. They break some of the best sports news and they break it down on the business side, which is amazing. So you're not just seeing, the stats from last night's game or match or anything. You're actually seeing the business side of it. So it explains, the revenue, the ticket sales, vendor sales, merchandise. So I highly recommend following them. You can get a daily newsletter. You just sign up. And they also send out a weekly job report, which is very good. And it includes internships all over the country and some international posts. So I highly recommend that one. And they also do really great webinars with some very high up people in a lot of great industries. And one more would be Sports Pro. So they actually just sent out an email maybe 2 weeks ago, and they're doing just a series full of webinars and just about every kind of industry topic you can think of in sports. So sponsorship, esports, women in sports, gaming, finance. So I highly recommend that. I think the first one starts today, and that one will focus on, I think, streaming platforms and esports. So I think one of the guys from the UFC is actually doing it today, talking about UFC Fight Pass, which I highly recommend. So, and these are all free things that you can attend, and you don't have to put any money into it. You can just watch online. So those are easy ones, I think, and you can network with those people. So a lot of times they'll provide their LinkedIn page, and yeah, you can just reach out to them, and most of the people are very open and respond to you as well.
Awesome. Lastly, what is the best piece of career advice that you would give your younger self?
Just stick with it. I mean, a lot of people told me like, wow, you want to get in sports? It's very hard to get in there. And I know it is hard, but if you really want it, you just keep going after it. So you can still have, your regular day job that you work, but you can follow your passion for sports and just try to find your way in there. You can even try to create your own sports thing. So I think just stick with it. I would just tell myself, and, you know, things will eventually work out. And also, another advice that I would give, piece of advice, is to travel. Don't be afraid to like get out there. I think once you travel outside your comfort zone, you just see things very differently, and it makes you less afraid, and it makes you want to go after things and follow your dreams and everything. So I would say that too.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Tiffany, for sharing your amazing story with us. For those students who want to tune in, clock, we're going to explore the world of fragrance with Know Your Scent with Alvin Conte. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.